detained immigrants from the Metropolitan Detention Center to the Adelanto Detention Center. They asked us, the members of Congress, to investigate, as is our right to do. So on Sunday morning, Congress members Gil Cisneros, Derek Tran, and I went to Adelanto to conduct our congressional oversight and ensure that these detainees were receiving due process. But as we pulled up to the front and were about to enter, ICE actually closed the chain link fences right in front of our eyes, locked the gates with chains, refusing to let us in. The law says that members of Congress can conduct oversight in any facility with detainees controlled by the Department of Homeland Security. But it is obvious that ICE and GEO, the private prison company of Adelanto, believe that they are above the law, and it is obvious that they have this attitude because Trump believes he is above the law. It is outrageous. What is happening in Los Angeles is a manufactured crisis by Trump, all done while flaunting the law. He is the one that conducted these massive raids without warrants, without names on these warrants. The protests were inevitable. And now, because the protests are happening, Trump sent in the National Guard without the governor's approval. On top of that, he's sending in the Marines and threatening to arrest a sitting governor. This is unprecedented, dangerous, and authoritarian. The presence of the National Guard and the Marines is meant to sow chaos. It escalates violence, not de-escalate. But de-escalation is what we need, and our local law enforcement is more than capable of doing that. So we are here because we stand with our constituents and immigrant communities across this country. We stand with them to protest peacefully in the streets, as many of them have done. We must put an end to Donald Trump's inhumane attacks on immigrant communities and on our Constitution.
Next, I would like to introduce Jimmy Panetta. He is a veteran, and he's also from Northern California. Jimmy.
Thank you, Representative Gomez, for sharing the stage with your Northern California brethren. I want to thank all of my Southern California and California members who are here today. Look, let me simplify it. This is about retribution, it's about provocation, and it's about distraction. It's about retribution because Donald Trump does not like California. He does not like our policies. He does not like our politics. But you know what? That's okay, because clearly, based on the election, California does not like the personality, the narcissistic personality of Donald Trump, and we clearly do not like his policies. This is about provocation. It was Donald Trump who sent in the military to a peaceful protest. It was about Donald Trump who sent in the military to basically stir things up and give him the image and give him the fight and give him the pictures that he wants. And this is about covering up. This is about distraction. It's about distracting from his failed domestic policies. It's about distracting from his failed foreign policies. And it's about distracting from a pathetic row between the President of the United States and the richest man in the world. When it comes to Californians, we will continue to protest, and we will continue to do it in a peaceful way. And those who don't are going to pay the consequences. Because when it comes to Californians, we support immigrants. And yes, we support the Constitution. So we will stand with the protesters who do it in a peaceful way and continue to push back on this administration. And we will stand shoulder to shoulder, as you see up here today, because we are willing to go toe-to-toe with the President of the United States. Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce Speaker Emerita to say a few words.
Thank you, Congressman Gomez, for putting this letter together and bringing us together this morning. I listened in traffic. Mind you, for what they had planned for the weekend, they had blocked off a whole lane of traffic. So it took, what takes 8 minutes took a half an hour to get here. Happy birthday to you, too. But in any event, thank you. And I could hear by my staff's phone what others have said, and I associate myself with their remarks. Here's the thing. The president has said he can't send in the guard without the governor's agreement, permission. The president has said, I don't know if I have to obey the Constitution. I hope the president would read Article 10 of the Constitution, and I urge all of you to do that as well, because Section 12046 of Article 10 says that the National Guard cannot be called up by the president without the consent of the governor. So that is the basis under which he's proceeding. That is the basis on which the governor of California is suing. Really, I think it's really important for people to know how this came to be. Raids that they were holding, situations where if your case is not settled, if you're still out there and haven't had a resolution of your status, you have to, by law, report in on a regular basis. You are obeying the law, and now they are deporting people for obeying the law. So, as others have said, it's a distraction. It's really stupid, because we understand that we are a nation of immigrants. We want people to have a facilitation of their status. We do not want any violent protest, and that would be addressed for those who are acting violently. I do want to say two more things. One is, and I say this as a former party chair, when there is a large gathering of people, the anarchists see it as an opportunity and they move in. So always have to be careful whether you see a burned car or a broken window or whatever it is. It may be the exuberance of the moment, but it may be the anarchist setting in. I heard one of the former police chiefs of Los Angeles speak about this on Sunday. Secondly, and you know this to be true, and I haven't seen it really reflected so much in the press, in a bipartisan way, on January 6th, with violence against the Constitution, against the Congress, and against the United States Capitol, we begged the President of the United States to send in the National Guard. He would not do it. Not only would he not do it, when law enforcement people were being harmed, some later died, he would not send it in when an insurrection that he incited was causing damage to those assigned to protect the Capitol and the Constitution that day, to accept the results of the Electoral College. That day, he didn't do it. He forgave those people. Now his people want to raise money for them, and yet, in a contra-constitutional way, he has sent the National Guard into California. Something is very wrong with this picture. Inconsistent in his actions, contrary to his own statement that he couldn't, of a year ago, that he couldn't send anyone in without the governor's consent, any place, and in violation of the Constitution. Thank you again, Mr. Gomez, for bringing us together.
Thank you, Speaker Emerita. Now, I'd like to introduce Nanette Barragan.
Thank you. I'm Congressmember Nanette Barragan. I represent California's 44th District. I represent Paramount, California. Where on Saturday morning, the protest started. Where on Saturday morning, you had ICE agents beginning to stage what was believed to be an enforcement activity at the Home Depot lot across the street. They were going to look for people looking for work, not for criminals, but for people looking for work. Word got out, and protesters showed up to protest. Now, it started peacefully, And we saw the agents, the federal agents, the ICE agents, use tear gas, use pellets, and that, of course, inflamed the situation even more. I talked to the sheriff's department, who said they got a call around 10 a.m. They had no notice. They had no heads up. So they had to mobilize other officers before they could even respond. Now, we've seen an image of somebody who was violent that day, and we all condemn the violence, and those people should be prosecuted. We do not support that. But the peaceful protesters that were there, that were tear gassed, that had the pellets shot at them, that's not right, and that's not what this country is about. That evening on Saturday, around 8 p.m., I spoke to the Paramount Police Department, the sheriff's there, and the situation was mostly under control. There was a few people left. They had gotten the ICE agents out and they had left the situation. What occurred was across the way in Compton, across from the bridge there, people started to show up. And we saw some of the evening crowd start doing things like property damage. And again, these are folks that we don't agree with and we condemn. The police department was very clear. We don't need help. We have this under control. And the sheriffs in Paramount got it under control. Overnight in Los Angeles, the LAPD got it under control as well and cleared out the situation. And then all of a sudden, the National Guard showed up. So we know this is intended to create chaos, to escalate the tensions, and those tensions have now risen. But we also saw yesterday peaceful protests and what that means. You don't see those images on the television because, as a reporter told me yesterday on television, nobody wants to cover a plane that lands safely. They want to cover the images of the violence, which is a small portion of downtown Los Angeles. So I just continue to reiterate that listen to the words of this administration. They're using words like insurrection. They're using words like invasion, because I believe this is their way to lay down the groundwork to try to have martial law and invoke the Insurrection Act. And I think that's a concern. And remember, this is an order not just for California, but for this entire country, and they can send people anywhere. And that is dangerous, it's wrong, and we'll continue to stand up and oppose it. Thank you.
Next, Representative Mike Levin.
Thank you, Jimmy. Good morning, everybody. For the past 6.5 years, I've had the great honor to represent our Marines and sailors on Camp Pendleton. And during my time in Congress, I've fought for them, I've fought for their families, I've fought for our veterans to ensure that our service members are the most prepared anywhere in the world. And through my work, I've had the privilege of meeting with so many Marines stationed right at Camp Pendleton and the surrounding communities. And I can tell you that none of them signed up for what the Trump administration is doing right now. Our Marines did not sign up to repress civilians. They didn't sign up to be used as pawns in a political agenda. The decision to deploy Marines to Los Angeles is an abuse of power. Full stop. The state of California, as has been said, neither requested the National Guard nor the Marines. The president sent them anyway. It's all about power. Let me be very clear, as my colleagues have said, we all support the right to peaceful protest. It's essential for a healthy democracy. We strongly condemn the agitators who are committing acts of violence. Their behavior is completely unacceptable. And they're giving people like Stephen Miller exactly the images that they want. And that makes it even easier to then pick a fight over political retribution. But by sending the Marines to Los Angeles, the president is fanning the flames of a very delicate situation. He wants the protests to spiral so he can crack down even further. I'll always support our service members. And the vast majority of Marines are not trained for this. They're training for non-lethal weapons and for crowd control and for civil disobedience. It's happening right now because they haven't had it before. It's a total of 4 days that they're training for this purpose. It's dangerous, and it threatens the very apolitical nature of our armed forces. Again, the president's sending Marines into a state that has not asked for their help, into a situation they're not trained for. I'm concerned this is not going to end well. We're going to continue to fight back against it in every way that we can. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Mike. Now, another member from the LA area, Luz Rivas.
Thank you, Congressman Gomez and my California colleagues. What Congressman Gomez, Torres, Correa, and I saw on Saturday and experienced while we visited the detention center in downtown Los Angeles was a stain on the values and on our country. Our communities are living in fear, and what they experienced this weekend was a crisis manufactured by Trump. It was unfortunate to watch what was happening. We were not let in. We were not allowed to fulfill our duty as Congress members to conduct oversight visits. And we met many families there that were, and attorneys of the detainees attempting to go in. And the way it was handled, even spraying some chemical agent at us, was horrible, knowing that there were members of Congress outside of that detention center, and they're willing to do that. Imagine what they're willing to do to Americans. You know, the protests that are happening in Los Angeles, like my colleagues have mentioned, we all condemn violence. We all condemn violence, but Los Angeles, you know, I was born and raised in the city of Los Angeles. I still live in the city of Los Angeles. I have seen many, you know, protests and unrest throughout my life. And this one is happening in like 3 small blocks in downtown Los Angeles. The images that we see on the media, of course, unfortunately, are people that are hijacking this for their own cause, but for the most part have been peaceful. The law enforcement of Los Angeles can handle this. There was no need to call in the National Guard, and I support the governor in his request to rescind that today. So I join my colleagues to condemn what is happening and to support Californians and Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we're running out of time in the room, I want to start taking some questions if people have it, and then some of the members who haven't spoke will be able to jump in and answer some of those questions. Go ahead.
A recent CBS YouGov poll found that 54% of Americans support the administration's deportation of illegal immigrants in the United States. Is the Democratic Party in any way out of touch with voters on this issue?
If you really start digging into the polling, it shows that it's when you start pointing out who it is, right? That if it's a mom that's been here, that's sought asylum, that's gone through the process, that it's children, then all of a sudden they don't support the deportation of those individuals. Donald Trump sold it as going after criminals, but they're going to Home Depots and car washes and restaurants. I don't know how many MS-13 members are working at car washes, Home Depots, and restaurants. So, and that's why you see the backlash of like the individual who was detained that was a restaurant worker in a red state, in a red city, and then all of a sudden her community came forward to help advocate for her. So I think that the Democrats understand that it's not about all immigrants. It's that how Donald Trump's trying to portray immigrants. Next question. Go ahead.
Senator Fetterman tweeted, posted on X, he said, "My party loses the moral high ground when we refuse to condemn setting cars on fire, destroying buildings, and assaulting law enforcement." How would you react?
Well,
we all could, Scott.
so go ahead.
I wanted to ask, I know you touched on this a little bit, some of you, but the president joking about arresting Governor Newsom.
I don't
not
think
a
that was a
joke.
joke.
That was
It
not a
wasn't a
joke.
joke.
Is that, I mean, speak to that, the concern that this is.
I would say I'm against arresting any of the most prominent elected officials in this country. But if you're going to elect a prominent elected official, start with the one with 34 felony convictions.
Let's also be clear, then the board
Come here.
of Czar said, Then the border czar said that he wasn't going to do it because obviously, if they did arrest Gavin Newsom, then it would change the narrative, and then it would be about the illegal arrest of a sitting governor who was elected by the majority of voters in the state of California, and not about a felon who is in the White House who is manufacturing chaos to distract from the fact that he is cutting hundreds of billions of dollars in needed programs that will kill people. This is about if it bleeds, it leads. So he has created and manufactured violence so that he can have a show on the television. But other people, older people, folks who are disabled, young people are going to be bleeding when Medicaid gets cut, when people are evicted from their homes. And this has been an illegal deployment of the Marines and the National Guards without the request or the consent of the sitting mayor and the sitting governor of the state of California.
So are you suggesting this is
So what we're talking about here is bad faith enforcement of our immigration laws. As the Speaker Emerita alluded to, people have to check in. People are following the law when their cases have not been fully adjudicated, and ICE is doing something unprecedented. They are arresting and deporting people who are following the law. That has understandably created people who have been put in an impossible situation. Americans do want our enforcement, our immigration laws enforced, but they're also fair. They don't like unfairness. They don't like people being denied due process rights. And that's what's actually going on also here when people show up to their hearings and then thinking they're obeying the law and then seeing their families being arrested and taken away, or showing up to schools and parents separated from their kids. This is going to inflame communities. These are intentional acts of inflammation by this administration. They need to pull back. They need to pull back the National Guard, and they need to rein in ICE's inflammatory tactics.
So are you suggesting that this is a distraction from the big, beautiful bill and the
Yes,
Go ahead. All right, right here.
Now, you mentioned that you want to have the National Guard withdrawn, you don't want to have the National Guard being involved in this. You also mentioned the insurrection, so to speak, on January 6th. That was back when the National Guard was pulled back and was waiting for a long period of time, and then there was a big investigation that was put into that, and people said, "Where's the National Guard? We're having all these rioters who came into the Capitol. Where is the National Guard?" Then all of a sudden, here we had the National Guard that was put in there because there was, let's face it, a lot of rioters and a lot of violence that was going on there that you're calling peaceful protesters. But a lot of people didn't see that on the TV screens. So either you don't have the National Guard that didn't come in on time on January 6th, or you do have the National Guard where there was violence. We did see it on our TV screens. What do you want?
So, wait a second. So on January 6th, I was here. There was 50,000 people outside. They were scaling the walls. They were bashing in, breaking in, with members of Congress trapped in the gallery, including myself, including a lot of the people here. That was a dire situation where the police were run over. People were beaten with. And the difference is Speaker Pelosi asked for help. Very different situation. And here's the thing. Donald Trump is the one that was actually inciting that. And here's what's also going on. How many police officers have died in LA? 0. How many people died on January 6th? 5. How many people their heads were beaten in here? At least 1 or 2 or maybe more, right? There was so when people say that Democrats are being not consistent is completely wrong. Next question.
Can we get their outlet when they ask a question?
Yeah.
Who are you with?
Why address this as a distraction from the big, beautiful bill and Musk instead of treating it as a goal unto itself?
Who are you with again?
I'm with Charles Reuters, sir.
Who wants to answer that?
Anybody?
The distraction question.
Instead of
I think there's some difference of opinion here as to what Trump is trying to distract us from. But it's clear that that's what he's doing, and he can create so much inflammation in Los Angeles and then say, oh, well, now there's a riot that I've created. I think what he's trying to distract us from is the most embarrassing big bromance blowout in history, but more importantly, the biggest amount of corruption since the privatization of the Soviet Union. The $400 million plane, the $300 million from Chinese interests into Trump coin, and the $2 billion from Abu Dhabi into his Trump stablecoin. That we shouldn't be having this press conference here. We should be having charts showing you the levels of corruption that we've seen in the Trump administration. But Trump thinks he can win by tearing down the city of Los Angeles.
Next question.
Hi, I'm with Notice. So right now, we've seen that the Trump administration is kind of doing this thing of going after Democratic elected officials. So the charges against Congresswoman McIver, the arrest against the New York mayor, and now we have that threat against Governor Newsom. So is there any concerns now that that's going to be kind of become the new normal? And again, if there's any concern that any one of your Democratic colleagues, both here in Congress and just anybody in the party, any official, could be next.
Yeah.
Waters take this?
Oh yeah, they're most likely to go after you next. So you want to? Are you concerned?
A couple of things here. I got a lot of calls about the arrest of David Huerta, who's one of our organized labor leaders at SEIU. And so this started on Saturday. It was mentioned here several times that they were in South LA. They were in my district. They were in our district. They were in Paramount. They were in Lenox, and they were in Compton, California. And they were roughing up. They were basically raiding. They were doing anything that they could to get the numbers that the president wants to prove what he said he was going to do when he was campaigning. He was going to get millions deported. And so you all know, how many know that Los Angeles is a sanctuary city? First, do you know that? How many of you know and understand that those people who are on the ground, who are seeing what is going on, should be paid attention to? I don't like the idea that the minute the president says there's violence, the press kind of responds to that. I was on the ground. I went on the ground on Sunday. I went to downtown detention center to try and get in. They slammed the door in my face. There were few people outside. They were not protesting. But guess who really had the attention? It was the National Guard, armed with huge, look like AK-47, huge weapons pointed at the people on the sidewalk who were barely protesting at all. And so the first thing you got to get it in your heads is you cannot believe what the president is telling you. You've got to understand that he's a liar, that he cannot be trusted, that he wants to get the numbers. He wants to show MAGA crowd that he's in fact getting the numbers he promised he was going to get to deport people out of the country. Now, if you're not careful in the way that you analyze this and you see this, you're going to not understand when martial law is called. You know what is about to happen? I'll tell you what is about to happen. The National Guard is the first call out. The Marines, the second call out. Doesn't that cause you to wonder, why are we getting all of these armed forces out when the protests and even those who were out of step with what we are advocating, peaceful protest, did not create any violence? Nobody was shot, nobody was killed. Get it in your head. And so when martial law is called, what are you going to say? I missed the point. Don't miss the point, you all. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence. I was on the street. I know. And I went from downtown detention back out into the community, talking to people what happened in Paramount, what happened in Compton, what happened in Inglewood. So, first of all, get it straight. And don't just rely on what you're being told or the few incidents that you saw. He's provoking. He's trying to make sure that he gets people angry. People are worried about separation of families, children from their mothers and their fathers, etc. And of course, we always have to be careful that they're not agent provocateurs that we've learned about historically that's in the middle of all of this, trying to make sure that they create violence. We are not creating violence. We don't have any outpouring of violence. We are saying we want peaceful protest. The Constitution guarantees that. Stop this lying president from what he's doing and getting into your heads and get it straight.
Thank you. So adding on to it, the arresting of a member of Congress, threatening to arrest an individual is all part of a pattern of a president that is outside the bounds of the law. You know, when it comes to the elected officials, when it comes to attacking the courts, trying to impeach judges, ignoring court orders, sending in the military, nationalizing or federalizing the National Guard, that is the dark path that we are talking about. That is the path we are on, where he will end up in a place where he ends up calling martial law, unless the American people see that what's going on in California is an excuse to test the bounds of his authority or break those bounds completely.
Jimmy, just to back up what Maxine's saying, so we received a briefing from the general who commands our National Guard. I asked him in that briefing, is there any coordination between the now federalized National Guard and Los Angeles and state officials? He was at pains to say he didn't see any. Of the 2,000, that's the number you're throwing out there. That's the big dramatic number. 2,000 National Guard nationalized. Do you know how much? Do you know how many that our general reported actually being used? 1,600 are actually staying. They're not being used. They're not been tapped. About 325. 3 different locations, 50 guard at a time at each location, being replaced after 12-hour shifts. 150 people. Then he justifies another 700 Marines? Come on, press corps. Ask your questions. Right. Get the reporting straight. Right. You're reporting 2,000 sent to California, 700 Marines. This is ridiculous. This is nothing. This is much ado about nothing that this president's created. It's all a sham. Our people are seeing through it. You've got to help get the truth out there.
That's right. Absolutely.
Can I just add 10 seconds really quick? I also want to highlight, as what's been pointed out, the pattern. It's even the attack on the press. We have seen in the coverage of the LA, of what's happening right now in Los Angeles, is a reporter from NBC who had a press vest on, saying he was the press, being roughed up, told he had to leave. Yep. Last night we saw a CNN reporter who was luckily on air, who was called over. They started to arrest him and then told him that he had to get out. And we've seen clips of the reporters who are doing live shots, doing nothing, not even protesting, they're reporting and they're being shot with pellets. Okay, and those are the ones that we have documentation of. So these are reporters. These are your colleagues, and they're going after you too. And we know this president has thrown out the press that he doesn't like when they're reporting from the Oval Office. So this is a pattern of going down the road of being a dictator.
And someone should be asking how much all this is costing.
So I want to, I actually have to go to, I'm on the House Intelligence Committee, so I have to go run, but I'm going to let Mike Levine.
Go ahead. One thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Laura Friedman from Los Angeles. I just want to add a little anecdote about the effect of bringing the Marines in and bringing the National Guard in. So I'm a mom. I'm in a moms group on Facebook. You know, a bunch of non-political moms chatter about all kinds of stuff. Going into the weekend, the chatter turned to the raids. These are mostly American citizen moms, I'm assuming, you know, in suburban Los Angeles, very concerned about the raids, felt it was inhumane, have seen kids pulled out of school. We saw a huge reduction of kids going to school in Los Angeles. So they wanted to help. They were asking, where do we go and protest? In the last day, the talk that I have seen in this group is that they're afraid of their own government. They haven't been saying they're afraid of the guys, of the bozos that we see throwing rocks, who need to go to jail, they need to get arrested, totally unacceptable, they're putting everyone in danger. But they're afraid that they're gonna get shot by the National Guard. They're asking each other, are the Marines gonna have live ammunition? Are they gonna be shooting into the crowd? There's an effect here of chilling Americans' ability to exercise their First Amendment rights and protest. This is a bunch of moms who want to support their undocumented community members who are now scared to go to protests here in America. That's the effect that these policies from this president are having on citizens. That should be a bigger story. And they're asking each other, is it safe to go? I just want to go and stand and hold a sign. Are they going to arrest me? Are they going to shoot at me? That should be something that gives all of us pause in this moment.
Just following up on the use of the Marines, I hope you asked the tough questions. What are the rules of engagement and what is the legal authority? I can tell you the legal authority is a gray area at best. The Marines are only able to protect the federal property and federal personnel unless the President invokes the Insurrection Act, which he has not done. I have tried to find the legal authority. The closest we've come is a memo from 1971 used during the Nixon administration. There's no section relevant in the United States Code. The section relied on for use of the National Guard is solely for purposes of the use of the National Guard. So I asked that question. And as far as the rules of engagement, these are Marines who are trained in lethality. This is the most lethal fighting force in the world. They're not trained in the use of non-lethal weapons. They're not trained for civil disobedience. They're not trained for crowd control. Ask the questions. What are the rules of engagement? What is the legal authority? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Some of these members will stay behind and answer some questions. Thank you.
Now.
Thank you.
Can you just talk to us in Spanish just about the possibility of President Trump enacting the insurrectionist law and the consequences?
Okay. Quiero decir que nuestra comunidad en Los Ángeles, en California, en los Estados Unidos, tenemos muchas preocupaciones que este presidente va a hacer algo que no va a cambiar nuestro país para siempre. Y yo creo que si va a usar el Insurrection Act, eso va a hacer mucho daño a nuestra comunidad, pero va a hacer mucho daño a nuestro país, a nuestra democracia, va a hacer mucho daño a nuestro gobierno, porque gente va a creer que este país ya no es un democracia, es un país que es de una persona, y eso es Donald Trump. Y esa persona ya no está obligado a seguir la ley. So, nosotros tenemos estamos preocupados con esto, pero vamos a luchar cada día que nuestra comunidad, para el país, sabe qué está pasando. Gracias. Thank you.
All right. Good. Sounds good.